Hi folks, this is James from Fairy Tales, Myths and Legends. This time we're looking at the legend of Jack-o'-lantern or will-o'-the-wisp. Hope you enjoy this one. The Jack-o'-lantern, what a delightful and spooky custom it's become. Today when we think of the term, we conjure up the image of a carved pumpkin, hollowed out with almost reckless abandon, a ghoulish face etched into its orange skin, and a flickering candle inside, creating a rudimentary but deeply atmospheric lantern. Of course, this site is synonymous with Halloween, a playful nod to the supernatural. But the roots of this curious tradition stretch back hundreds of years, and its origins are far more mysterious and ethereal than one might expect. The story begins not with pumpkins, but with eerie, ghostly lights that shimmer over bogs and marshlands in rural Ireland, unsettling weary travellers with their otherworldly glow. For centuries across the wilds of Great Britain and Ireland, and indeed across much of the world, people have reported these strange wandering lights flickering and darting across treacherous swampy landscapes. These spectral illuminations go by many names. In Ireland they were known as jack-o'-lanterns, while in Britain they were will-o'-the-wisp. And for the learned few with a classical bent, they were ignis fatuus, which translates from the Latin as foolish fire. The North American cousins to these lights are often simply called orbs or ghost lights. But whatever the name, the phenomenon has always provoked a shiver of apprehension and a swirl of speculation. The question naturally is what causes these mysterious lights? Theories abound, ranging from the mischievous fairies or wayward spirits playing tricks on the living to the tragic, with some suggesting these lights are the souls of the lost, the for long dead, who failed to find their way to either heaven or hell. A more scientific explanation points to chemical reactions with the boggy soil, reactions between gases and the damp, peaty ground that produce a ghostly glow. But folklore, being what it is, rarely concerns itself with such prosaic answers. These lights were, and still are, generally seen as malevolent, leading the unsuspecting astray off safe paths and into the treacherous embrace of the marsh, where they could suffer injury or worse. In some chilling tales, these lights were even said to presage death itself, much like the wail of the banshee. Now, it wouldn't be Irish folklore without a deal with the devil, would it? Enter Stingy Jack, the legendary rogue who became forever linked with the jack-o'-lantern. His story, which surfaced in print in the 19th century, it likely echoes back to the 17th or earlier, is a rollicking tale of wit, drink and trickery. As the tale goes, Jack was a notorious rascal, fond of a pint, but not keen on paying for it. One day, the devil himself, no less, happened upon Jack, and they decided to share a drink together in a tavern. But when the moment arrived to settle the bill, neither had any coin to spare. Jack, ever the schemer, suggested that the devil transform himself into a coin so they could pay. The devil, fond of a bit of mischief himself, agreed. What followed, however, was a trick only Jack could have devised. As soon as the devil turned into a coin, Jack pocketed them, alongside a silver cross that naturally prevented the devil from escaping. Jack, with a glint in his eye, struck a bargain. He would release the devil, but only if he promised to leave Jack alone for a year, and crucially, not claim his soul. The devil begrudgingly agreed. But as we all know, bargains with the devil rarely stick. A year passed, and sure enough, the devil returned for his due. Yet again, Jack managed to trick the devil, this time by convincing him to climb a tree and fetch an apple. As the devil clambered into the branches, Jack swiftly carved a cross into the trunk, trapping the devil once more. In exchange for his release, Jack won another 10 years of peace. Time, however, is relentless, and Stingy Jack eventually shuffled off this mortal coil. His arrival at the pearly gates was met with a firm refusal. St. Peter was unimpressed by Jack's earthly conduct. So Jack turned to the devil, seeking entry to hell. But the devil, still smarting from his tricks, had no intention of letting him in. Instead, he cursed Jack to roam the earth for all eternity, with nothing but a single burning coal to light his way. Ever resourceful, Jack placed this coal into a hollowed-out turnip, creating his own lantern, thus becoming Jack of the Lantern, condemned to wander the dark nights with his eerie light. In Ireland, where this tale took root, the people adopted a peculiar tradition to keep Stingy Jack and other malevolent spirits at bay. During the Celtic festival of Samhain, celebrated on November 1st, they carved out vegetables, mostly turnips, and placed lights inside them, hoping the flickering glow would ward off evil. When Irish immigrants brought this custom to America, they discovered the humble pumpkin, a far more accommodating and pliable vegetable for carving, and thus the modern Halloween jack-o'-lantern was born. If you prefer a less supernatural origin, the term may have arisen from the 17th century habit of referring to any man whose name was unknown as Jack, much like the modern John Doe. Night watchmen, those who carried lanterns to patrol the streets after dark, were often called Jack of the Lantern. But let's not let that spoil the fun. Beyond Ireland, the ghostly lights that inspired the jack-o'-lantern are more commonly known as will-o'-the-wisp. These elusive lights have long been considered the souls of those trapped between this world and the next, spirits unable to ascend to heaven or descend to hell, just like Stingy Jack. In fact, tales of a certain Will who similarly outwitted the devil and was cursed to wander the earth abound in Britain. The legend may vary slightly, but the essence remains the same. These lights are the restless dead, forever seeking what they can never have, peace. Curiously though, sightings of these lights often involve more than one flickering flame. Does this mean Jack has some spectral companions? Some suggest that not one, but many souls have become similarly stranded between worlds, their collective lights creating an eerie, dancing glow that has so often been reported by travellers. Another theory posits that these lights are not lost souls at all, but spirits dispatched by the devil himself, whose sole purpose is to lead the living into peril. Then again, not everyone sees the will-o'-the-wisp as a malicious presence. In some legends, the lights are attributed to the fairy folk, mischievous certainly, but not necessarily harmful. Swedish folklore, for instance, tells of unbaptized spirits who wander the earth, using the light to guide travellers toward water in the hopes they might receive the baptism they were denied in life. And finally we come to the island of the-Wisp in Scotland, where the will-o'-the-wisp has held sway for over 200 years. Some say the light belongs to a blacksmith who, like Stingy Jack, could find no rest in either heaven or hell. Cursed to wander the earth with a single glowing ember, the poor spirit roams the island, forever cold, forever seeking warmth. Another tale speaks of a young girl from Benbecula who was condemned to haunt the shores of the-Wisp for her selfishness, hoarding a precious plant instead of sharing it with her community. This area of Scotland has many legends and myths, including several stories about the Kelpie, which you can find out more about in one of our other videos. Modern sightings of these spectral lights seem to have rather petered out, and it's little wonder really, given that so many of the bogs and marshes that once cradled such eerie phenomena have themselves dried up or been drained away by farming and development. With the disappearance of these ancient landscapes, the ghostly flickers that haunted them appear to have dwindled too. It's as if the ethereal lamps have quietly extinguished themselves, retreating into the annals of folklore as the earthly hosts, those dark peaty expanses, vanish into history. But while their appearance in the wild may have lessened, the legend of these wily lights has certainly not faded from popular culture. They have a marvellous habit of cropping up in literature and storytelling, tickling our imaginations in the most unexpected ways. One particularly splendid example can be found in the grand sweeping pages of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. You remember it well, I'm sure, Frodo, Sam and the ever-slinking Gollum making their way through the treacherous terrain of the Dead Marshes. These marshes, once the site of a fierce and ancient battle, are haunted by ghostly floating lights that tempt the unwary into the murky depths. Gollum, ever the connoisseur of danger, warns them of these tricksy lights, but alas, poor Frodo is not immune to their strange allure. He finds himself drawn in by one of these bewitching glimmers and soon is face to face with the long dead phantoms of warriors who perished in that ancient fateful battle. Here Tolkien taps into the same eerie vein of folklore that has long surrounded these mysterious lights, a dangerous otherworldly lure promising light and safety only to lead to death and oblivion. It's a trope as old as storytelling itself, but like all the best myths, it never truly goes out of style. The lights may have retreated from the marshes, but their legacy glows on in our imaginations, flickering just as tantalisingly as ever. Whether a warning, a guide, or a trick of nature, these lights have fascinated and terrified in equal measure. And while some modern theories attribute them to escaping gases, methane and phosphine igniting as they rise from the bog, there's something infinitely more captivating about the idea of Stingy Jack and his fellow restless souls forever roaming the night their lights flickering like forlorn beacons in the dark. Have you seen a jack-o'-lantern? Do you have something to add? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe as it helps us fund the channel. This has been James from Fairy Tales, Myths and Legends. We hope to see you again soon.